What happened after I left? 4 September 2016, 10:03 a.m. 42 degrees, 26 minutes, 41.6 seconds north, 87 degrees, 49 minutes, 32.5 seconds west. The next morning at maybe 3:30, 4 a.m., Lambert and I were both sleeping quietly in our twin beds when the desk clerk opened the door to our room and the bacchanalia came rolling in. That would be Henry, the Rabbit Warriors, the younger Gozilo, and 5 or 6 young women with loud, shrieking laughs, tourists from someplace. They were all really drunk, except for the desk clerk, and even he had a bottle in his hand. I don't know whether he had confiscated it from somebody or was trying to catch up. Lambert picked up his rosary while I shouted at the revelers to get out of our room. "This is the wrong place," I yelled. "Hey, Rabbit Warriors, you've got a double suite across the hall. The party's over there." The desk clerk was the only one who seemed capable of grasping concepts like the right room or the wrong room. Eventually, I got his attention. He apologized, offered me a swig, and led his drunken charges across the hall. A few minutes later, Lambert and I could hear Henry's voice, loud and hoarse. "Auf Sieg, alla Vittoria, ad victoriam." I couldn't believe it. Was Henry really toasting to victory? I mean, only a few hours before, I had seen what transpired at the old hunting lodge, and although I wouldn't have described what he did as a submission, I would certainly never call it a victory. Not for Henry. Yeah, sure, he had outfoxed the Pope. Yeah, he had trapped Gregory in a position where the Pope had to do the moral thing, had to play the good shepherd, had to welcome the errant sheep back into the flock, but still... Did Henry really think the world would forget that he had knelt for 3 days outside the Pope's door, that he had begged for forgiveness? We heard another toast, a dozen raucous voices together. "Auf Sieg, alla Vittoria, ad victoriam." "Henry thinks he won," I said. I expected Lambert to give me one of his "how could you be so obvious" looks, but instead he just shook his head kind of sadly and kept on praying the rosary. After about 20 minutes, I managed to get back to sleep. The alarm on my phone went off at 6, and I got up. All I could hear from the Rabbit Warriors' rooms was some kind of simple electronic music. Was someone playing an old-school video game? Or do they have very repetitious early-morning cartoons on Italian TV? Lambert was still asleep. I finished packing, which I had started the night before, and then I went downstairs and checked out of the hotel. There was a new desk clerk on duty, so I didn't mention anything about what went on in the middle of the night. I was just glad that he didn't object when I insisted on repeating everything I had to say 3 times. Then it took me a few minutes to find the Opel Zafira. It wasn't where I thought I had parked it, and when I got in, the driver's seat was adjusted all the way back, which was odd, because there was only one person in our group taller than me, the younger Gozilo, and I had never lent him the keys. But I didn't spend any time worrying about it, because I wanted to get to Bologna as early as possible. I had to make one more stop at the Villa Albarelli, just to make sure that all the accounts were in order. When I pulled into the courtyard, I saw Bertha pacing in the garden, talking on her phone. gesturing angrily with the other hand. Wait a minute. Were those? Yep, that's what those were. Tears on her cheeks. I did not interrupt. In the lobby, I found Conrad and Bruno both fast asleep. It was kind of comical, that scene. The little kid stretched out on a long couch, plenty of room to spare, while Bruno was slumped in a dainty little armchair. I noticed that they, like Bertha, were all still in the same clothes they had been wearing the night before at the ristorante. I guess I'd better explain about the ristorante. So the previous evening, after everything wrapped up at the hunting lodge, I had invited our whole group out to dinner. My treat, my explicit and voluntary treat, to celebrate the end of our journey. But Henry and some others didn't show. So it was a pretty dull meal. To be honest, it was really humiliating. I mean, during the whole trip, Henry had been perfectly happy to let me pay whatever tab he might run up as long as it looked like the generosity was coming from him. But the one time I wanted to do something in my own name... Oh, who am I kidding? I just wanted to have a nice little gathering so they could all say goodbye to me. Yeah, I wanted to be the center of attention, just for a couple of hours. Well, Henry and the Gozzilos and the Rabbit Warriors must have all had something better to do. I wasn't going to mention that dinner. My big night out at the ristorante in San Polo d'Enza. But now it seems to be part of the story, so there it is. I left early, before dessert, and told the ones who were there, just Bertha and Conrad and the monks, that I had an early plane to catch, which was true enough. The next morning, in the lobby of the Villa Alberelli, I thought about nudging Bruno's shoulder so I could ask him what happened after I left. But then I decided I didn't really want to know. Instead, I went to the desk and pushed a button that rang a bell somewhere. I guess it woke up the clerk. She came out of a door under the stairs, looking at me with real bitterness, as if I were personally responsible for everything that had happened, all of it, the whole goddamn mess. Or maybe that's just what I saw in her face. Some people always look grouchy when you wake them up. She ended up doing her job efficiently, if not warmly. I paid the outstanding charges and insisted that she tell me the same thing I had demanded to hear at the Hotel Papillon, that the rooms for my companions were paid up until checkout that day at noon. If there were any further charges, incidentals, room service, pay-per-view, late fees, I didn't care. My companions would be paying for those out of their own pockets. I made both desk clerks assure me and reassure me and then tell me again, one more time, I was completely paid up. Not one more euro, not one more euro cent was going to be put on my credit card.